Welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 7. So you're looking for the tasks to complete for U3L7. I just posted them on the homepage, so you can find them under assignments or in the weekly calendar. Today's date is the 20th. As usual, we'll start off with just getting into breakout rooms for a quick little share, come back together to discuss. Chat question, throwing it in the chat right now. Make sure this goes to everyone. Okay, if you were famous, what would you be famous for? Could be a famous writer, famous actor, famous musician, whatever you want to share. So let me throw the breakout rooms together here. Sorry, think about it for a few more seconds here. All right, sorry about that. Breakout rooms are open. Go for it. We'll come back together in about 2 minutes. Cool. All right, thanks everybody for sharing. Next on the docket is homework check. Hopefully everyone made it through those 2 ed puzzles on the vaccines, and I encourage you to keep up with the news on those. I haven't seen any major news lately or any updates specifically on Pfizer or Moderna. But if you guys hear of anything, I'd love updates from stuff too if you find anything you think is interesting. Otherwise, there was the National Geographic reading check, seeing 13 attempts on that. Looks good there. What you guys think? What baffles me is how did they keep the vaccine like ready in their overseas voyage? Because they didn't have refrigerators. What do they do? Go ahead, Rory.
They would infect orphans.
Yeah.
And take their pus.
They basically had like 10 children and they kind of like cycled them through, I guess. I think it said 2 at a time or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. And then if I remember in the article, those orphans all got adopted in Central America, and then they just picked up more orphans and carried those with them on the rest of the voyage, which is pretty crazy. This is the kind of thing, there's got to be a book out there or something about this. Any questions or anything challenging you found, or anything else you wanted to comment on the reading? Does anyone here subscribe to National Geographic? Did anyone get it? No? Oh, they've done some great issues, Zach. They've done some great issues recently all about disease stuff, and so I might try to share a couple more articles with you, especially as we start getting into the more historical stuff and talk about the plague and things like that. They always have really good visuals and good information, and so we'll see. I haven't been arrested yet for any copyright infringement, so I'll keep scanning those to share with you guys if we can. Alrighty. Next then was our goal today is to explore the idea of herd immunity and look at how vaccines can contribute to that. So we're just gonna watch a short video to start off with. I'm gonna optimize my screen here. Hopefully this comes through. This is just 3 minutes long, I think. Check it out.
When a new disease emerges and starts infecting people in a population, one of the things we really want to know is whether it's going to continue to spread and infect more and more people, or whether it's eventually going to die out. Some diseases like measles are highly infectious. In a fully susceptible population, each measles case will, on average, infect about 16 to 18 additional people. Something like flu, however, is less transmissible. Each case, on average, would infect between 2 or 3 people. The number of cases that each infectious person generates can vary for different diseases, and we call this number the basic reproduction number, or R0 for short. Now, R0 doesn't depend on how severe the symptoms are, rather it's a measure of how transmissible the infection is, and as a result we can use it to work out what's required to stop an epidemic. One of the ways we can stop epidemics is using vaccination. Now, you might think that to stop a disease you need to vaccinate an entire population, but actually this isn't the case. Of course, if you vaccinate someone, it protects them and stops them from getting infected, But because people who are vaccinated can't pass it on, vaccination also stops the chains of transmission. And that means that this can create a protective barrier which actually stops the epidemic spreading within a population. Say the basic reproduction number of an infection is 2. This means that in a fully susceptible population, each infected person will on average give the disease to 2 other people. But if 50% of the population are vaccinated, each infectious person, on average, will only be able to give it to one of these 2 people. And this means that the epidemic wouldn't be expected to grow over time. This is known as herd immunity. Herd immunity means that as long as a certain proportion of the population is vaccinated, the disease won't be able to transmit within that population. We've seen that if the basic reproduction number R0 is 2, we'd need to vaccinate half the population to stop disease transmission. By the same logic, if R0 is 3, we'd need to vaccinate 2/3 of the population. If we keep going, for highly infectious diseases like measles, we need to vaccinate 17 out of every 18 people, or about 94% of the population, to stop transmission. Herd immunity is especially useful for protecting members of the population who can't be vaccinated, perhaps because they're too old, too young, or have vulnerable immune systems. If they're surrounded by people who have received the vaccine, then that can protect them from infection. If, however, people forgo vaccination, then the herd can no longer protect these people. This means that the population as a whole can be vulnerable to outbreaks. So far, we've just been talking about averages. One of the big challenges in my work is incorporating some of the complexities of reality into these mathematical models. Vaccines are an incredibly powerful public health tool, and the best way to protect populations against disease is to make sure as many people are vaccinated as possible, so we don't run the risk of slipping below this vaccine threshold for herd immunity.
All right. So I'm sure some of you have been hearing this term, especially now that there's been discussions about vaccines, of herd immunity. The overall point that I want you to take from that video is that in order to defeat or stop an epidemic like what we're experiencing right now, do we need to vaccinate every single person? We don't. In some cases, you don't even have to vaccinate half of the population. You also don't have to have a vaccine that's effective even 100% or 95% of the time. Like, I know these companies with Pfizer and Moderna in particular are really touting this like 95% effective. As far as I understand, most flu vaccines, which we all get, right, are 50% effective or around there, right? Like, it's definitely not 90. And yet they definitely still quell the spread of the disease. So there's sort of a match between the transmission rate and the number of people that need to be vaccinated in order for it to be really effective. If you can get those things to match and reduce the spreading even by half, it's really effective, and it protects people who are more vulnerable, right? That's kind of the big thing of this idea of herd immunity, is that healthy people, if we can get vaccinated or immune to it, then you're protecting the elderly or the young or people who have pre-existing conditions. So I have a whole little kind of quiz activity for you guys to work on today. Just going to walk you through what it looks like and then let you go to work on it. We are on task number 3, herd immunity. The second link, so the first link is the video. The second link, simulating herd immunity. When you click on that, it's going to take you to a Canvas quiz that I put together. And you're going to be basically using an online simulator that looks like this. I don't know if you've seen this in other classes, but it's basically 4 different diseases. They've got cold, influenza, measles, and Red Death, which are all allegories to actual diseases. But you can run the whole simulation based on different population densities, mixing. We're not going to be using this version of it, though. Instead, the first thing you're going to do in lesson, you're going to click on Virgin Field here, which means there's no vaccine, but we're going to go with vaccination. And then this is what you're going to be working with and paying attention specifically to the death toll after 100 days. So every simulation goes for 100 days, and then it shows you what the death toll was, and I don't care about sick days or any of that stuff. We're going to be looking at the percent death toll. So you're going to run the simulation under various settings. The instructions are in the quiz, and you're going to be opening up this Google Sheet, which has 3 tabs to it. So please note there's influenza on the bottom, then Red Death, and then COVID-19. And so you're going to work through each of these, starting with influenza. I have instructions on how to enter the data. Averages should calculate automatically, and it should also automatically fill the influenza summary table, and so on. And then you have a couple questions. So after you've completed the influenza data entry, you'll have a couple questions on it. Then you'll do Red Death and answer some questions on it. and then COVID-19 and answer a couple questions. And again, all of this is centered around the idea of herd immunity and just how many people we need to get vaccinated and what else can be done to improve the effectiveness of a vaccine. So I'll be here listening. If you have any questions or if something doesn't work or if you're not sure what to click on or anything like that, please take the time to read the instructions, go through each step, make sure you're doing it correctly. And we'll come back together to discuss our data. I'm going to give us 25 minutes to work through this, and then we'll come back together to check in. It's okay if you're not done after 25 minutes. Like, this can just roll into homework, but we'll just come check in after 25 minutes. So go for it. Let me know if you need help.